Okay, I think I can get us started now. Yeah, I think most people have joined. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today. I'm going to get us started. I know there still might be a couple of people trickling in, so I'll take my time on this intro slide. I want to welcome you today to our session, HomeConnect, first year hurdles, second year successes, our lunch and learn. My name is Simone Lilly, and I am the Manager of Community Investments with End Homelessness St. John's. And I will be presenting today along with my colleagues, Sherwin Flight, who's our Landlord Engagement Lead, and Nicole Aylward, who's our Tenancy Engagement Lead. I'd like to actually start today by respectfully acknowledging the island of Newfoundland, where I'm located and presenting from today as the ancestral unceded homelands of the Mi'kmaq and the Beothuk. Today, these lands are home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. I would also like to acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Southern Inuit of this province. Before we get started, I do want to do a bit of housekeeping here. Everyone, your microphones have been muted. You can use the Q&A feature to ask questions. If you just look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little icon there. Feel free to pose questions throughout our presentation. We'll answer them all at the end of the presentation in the order that they were received. We should be presenting today for about 25 minutes, I'd say, but it might be closer to 30, but we'll have a chance at the end for that Q&A session as well. As I mentioned, we're with the organization End Homelessness St. John's. I know there's many people on this call that are very familiar with us. But I do, for anyone who isn't, I do want to kind of give a bit of background on our organization, which HomeConnect as a program sits within. So End Homelessness St. John's is essentially an organization that exists to prevent and end homelessness in St. John's. We are the community entity under Reaching Home, Canada's homelessness strategy. And as that community entity, we are responsible for developing and implementing and leading our community plan to end homelessness. We are a system planning organization. We're responsible for creating an integrated system of care. And essentially, we aim to bring all the stakeholders to the table to be able to work together and ensure that the supply of housing-related supports and resources are meeting the needs and the demand for our most vulnerable populations. Bottom line here is we are aiming to make St. John's the next community in Canada to end homelessness. So for us to really talk about our program HomeConnect and kind of our successes and some of the hurdles we faced in our first year, I think it's important to talk a little bit about our community's context and kind of the context in which this program sits and how it was developed. So in St. John's, as many of you know, there is just simply insufficient, safe, suitable, and acceptable non-market housing stock to meet the need. Social housing wait lists are high for kind of those bachelor and one-bedroom apartments in particular, and openings in supportive housing are rare. So there is this strong reliance on private market rental. We do have an opportunity here, though, because in the kind of rental vacancy here, unlike a lot of places in Canada, we actually have a pretty high vacancy rate. We have about a 7% vacancy rate, and that rate has actually been steadily climbing since 2013. But despite that vacancy rate, rental rates haven't decreased. And landlords, even though they've been sitting kind of with those vacant units and losing rental income, we are still hearing reports that individuals facing barriers to housing are still having a hard time engaging those landlords and finding a place to live. So kind of some of those reasons which we've heard have been, just stigma or perceived risk of renting to someone. Sometimes negative experiences. We have a very small landlord community here in St. John, so one negative experience can quickly trickle throughout the landlord community. So kind of all those different factors have made it tough despite that vacancy rate. Another thing we do have going for us here in our community, though, is that we have amazing community agencies that are doing some incredible support work with folks. And there is that capacity for outreach support within those community agencies. So there is a win-win situation here. There's a clear opportunity for us to be able to connect those landlords who have those vacant units, the community agencies who are looking for housing and are able to provide support, and individuals who are experiencing homelessness. There's a common goal here for landlords and tenants, and that's successful tenancies. But there's also a clear need that if we were going to kind of create an opportunity to make those connections and design a program, we would really need to consider how to make the unique needs of landlords and kind of really look at that position, and also be able to provide incentives that would outweigh those perceived or real risk that they wouldn't have in the private market. So we've built on that opportunity, and we've designed a program called HomeConnect. And HomeConnect's core purpose is to be able to create matches between those landlords, the community, and the tenants. It's aiming to make sustainable matches. So we're thinking not just about housing for today, but what is the housing fit for the long term. And our program, it's taken a long time for us to get this kind of concept off the ground, but we have actually just celebrated our first full year with the program. We launched in April of 2020, and we celebrated that our first tenancy actually on June 8th. So we're just over that 1 year mark of our tenancy. So if you're wondering what this HomeConnect program is, if you're not familiar with us, I'm actually going to pass things over to Sherwin Flight, my colleague here, who's going to take us through some of the ins and outs of what this program actually looks like.
Thanks, Simone. One of the first questions that we get when we start talking about the HomeConnect program is, what is HomeConnect? So when we look at HomeConnect, it's basically a website to list available rental units. It's a set of standardized processes for landlords, agencies, and tenants to follow. And it's a range of supports and benefits to help achieve successful tenancies. And we'll look at each of those in a little more detail now. There are many rental listing services online, places like Kijiji, Classified Ads, NL Buy and Sell, and a range of others. HomeConnect is specifically designed for those who have experienced barriers to rental housing stability and require some extra support. For this reason, HomeConnect is only available through community agencies and is not available to the general public. The HomeConnect website works a lot like Kijiji, so an agency would use that to search and filter the rental listings that are available to look for, matches for the specific needs of the clients that they're working with. And the contact information is there for each landlord as well. So if you have additional questions or to set up a viewing, there's no searching for that information. It's easily available. The standardized processes that we've put in place include things like third-party rental unit inspections, standard documentation such as rental agreements, consent forms, things like that. And we also have a single point of contact for people that have concerns. So for landlords, that would be myself as the landlord engagement lead. For community agencies that have any questions or concerns about HomeConnect, that would be Nicole as the tenancy lead. We've tried to keep that process standard across all landlords so that agencies know what to expect regardless of which landlord they're working with. And support and benefits. We designed HomeConnect from the ground up based on feedback from landlords and agencies. Some of you may remember talking to me a couple of years back when I went around to the agencies, and we went through a fairly long list of questions in terms of what works, what doesn't, what they're looking for. And based on that, we've built the program to try to fill in the gaps that landlords and agencies were experiencing. And we put the program in place to support successful tenancies. So we do have the flexibility to address a range of different issues that come up. We do cover things like tenant insurance when it's required. We do have a landlord protection fund with the $10,000 claim limit. And those are all things that were put in place based on feedback from the agencies and the landlords that we spoke to. So from a process perspective, it starts with us onboarding landlords and their units. So we would go through the program with a landlord. They would sign up on the MOU and provide the information about the rental listing, address, the rent and deposit, any features and services, utilities that are included. And then we would list those on our website for community agencies to browse through. Community agencies would use the website to work with the clients that they have to find a suitable match for them in the community, and can apply through our website directly for those units, and those applications would go to the landlord. So the application process, we've tried to make that as easy as possible as well. Once an application has been approved by a landlord, we usually take care of the rental agreement and any of the documentation that's required. So we would just send that off to be signed by the tenant and the landlord, and then send signed copies of that back to the agency to make sure that they have all the documentation that they need for things like income support and Eastern Health top-ups. We also require community agencies to check in on a regular basis with the clients that they have in the HomeConnect program. And this is just to ensure that we catch any issues early on, and that we can sort of keep that communication open and throughout the relationship, so that we can mitigate any problems that may arise. And it's worked well for us so far. We've really managed to avoid evictions and terminations. We've managed to rehouse a few folks where things weren't really working out. So I think that ongoing communication between agencies and landlords and HomeConnect staff, I think, is a really important part of this program that we've seen leads to successful tenancies. And on that note, I'm going to pass it along to Nicole, who's our tenancy lead, to talk about successful tenancies.
Thank you, Sherwin. Obviously we talked about the whole goal of HomeConnect being a successful tenancy, and we feel that that kind of hinges on four things: matching tenancies with their needs based on the landlord, based on the environment. So a good fit's really super important. Good consistent flow of communication from all parties is key, as Sherwin mentioned. HomeConnect strives to create safe and understanding space for tenants. We found a toolkit to support tenants and landlords for dispute resolution. So understanding is key. And responsibility. HomeConnect prioritizes the concerns of landlords and the needs of tenants to create really responsible tenancies that hopefully transition over a long period of time. COVID-19, I guess you guys are all familiar that we're in a pandemic, and as a direct response, End Homelessness has launched the HomeConnect program early. So we did, like Sherwin said, he was working on this for a long time, but we launched this early to keep more people in more houses quickly. So that leads us into our next slide. Like anything that's launched early and is brand new, there was a few hurdles that came to light as we moved forward. One of the first things was the process, some of the kinks that came to light for that. We also had an inventory of units that was quickly depleted as applications kind of came in. We also struggled to find the great balance between the level of agency involvement and what the landlord expectation was for what the support should be. And it was often difficult to mitigate issues and concerns from all sides with one staff. So that brings us into our second year and the solutions that we are working on. The first one is we are constantly improving the process based on feedback from our landlord, the community partners, tenants, all agencies, and how we can make that as streamlined and as, efficient as possible for everyone involved. Tracking landlord leads and implementing Salesforce. We have a new database that's designed to help track and acquire new landlord engagements, and that's going to really build up our inventory, which we'll be able to bring on more tenancies. We also worked on individual support plans for each tenancy to encourage the highest probability of a successful, stable housing. We've established a base 30-day check-in that seems to be working really well for our program. The best number one improvement, in everyone's opinion, not just mine, is that they hire additional staff, which was me, to help alleviate some of the pressure from poor old Sherwin. This allows more balanced approach in the tenancies and the landlord concerns. Next, I'd like to highlight a couple of the highlights from the first year program. So we developed a rental housing website, which Sherwin talked about. We established a landlord protection fund, which Simone addressed as some of the landlords' perceived or real concerns. In the landlord engagement blitz, we really ramped up our efforts to bring in some more landlords. The launch of a HomeConnect ahead of schedule, like we mentioned, as a response for COVID-19. We hit a great milestone of onboarding our first 25 landlords. We also hit the huge milestone of our first 25 tenancies, which is big. We presented HomeConnect in our community to our partners, to landlord groups, and also at a national congress for CHRA. We are developing and strengthening partnerships with community agencies, government, private stakeholders. The other thing we did was successful application to a Canadian Housing Transformation Center to transform our housing model. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the number one, it's just a coincidence, guys, that the hire of the tenancy support lead is number one highlight for this. So here we are talking about our staffing model. And it's grown from just Sherwin into 3 staff. It simply didn't work to efficiently have one person advocating for everybody. And so this really breaks it nicely. Sherwin does the landlord engagement piece and the onboarding process and a lot of the move-in process and paperwork aspect. I kind of come in as the agency tenancy support and help with any issues and concerns that come down the road and increase in support plan. Simone kind of oversees the whole program and helps mitigate the process as a whole to see things as a balanced approach. The program is not really designed to be a forever supplement for landlords and tenancies. The goal is to move people into the private market and create more space for new tenants to come in. So it's designed to offer supports and landlords for 1 or 2 years, with tenancies then moving into the HomeConnect Lite and then eventually into the private market. This process can take as little as 1 year. It can take, quite a bit longer. We do it in consultation with the landlord, the tenant, the agency, with us. We consider things like, is the tenant happy with the fit? Is the landlord happy with the fit? How is the sustainability for the budgeting for rent? Have there been any concerns in the past? What is the level of support needed? Lots of different things involved there, but the overall goal is to move people toward that private market space. And that brings us to our next slide. I know you guys are all asking, what's to come, everybody, what's to come? So we're planning on coordinating our efforts with coordinated access. And this is going to help increase our tenant supports and broaden the access into our program. Obviously, always more landlords, keep that unit inventory up high so that we can bring more people into the program. And we're actually working toward tenancy resources actively all the time to help keep our tenants engaged, informed, educated, keep them able to advocate for themselves. So when they do graduate to the private market, they're really set up for success there. And we are actively developing resources, videos, webinars, paper materials. We're providing training opportunities for our landlords. As we discussed, the understanding piece was one of those big pieces that we required in the beginning for successful tenancy. And we're hoping that this is really focusing there to make that safe space for our tenants. I'll move it back over to, I think Sherwin's taking the last little bit.
All right, when we look at some stats from April to April, which was our first year of HomeConnect, as Nicole mentioned earlier, we did reach a milestone of having 25 landlords onboarded. We did have another milestone of 41 tenancies that we've had under the HomeConnect program. When we look at the rent ranges, for rooms, they're going anywhere from 5 to 9. Apartments are going from 6 to 14. We have a couple of houses under the program for very specific situations, and those are going from about 12 to 15. So while we don't have a whole lot of full houses in our inventory, we do have a couple. We've only had 3 evictions under HomeConnect. So that would be an eviction where a formal termination notice was served by the landlord. In the other cases that we've had where things just haven't worked out, and sometimes it's, it's not working out for the tenant, could be location, or it might not be working out for the landlord, or both. So in most of those cases, we've been able to rehouse the people and they found another suitable unit under the HomeConnect program. So we don't consider those evictions because they weren't actually terminated. They weren't given a date they needed to move out. They were just able to find a more suitable place and just move on like anyone else would, I guess, when you're in a place that's not really suitable. We've only had 11 claims under the Landlord Protection Fund in our first year, and we paid out $9,245 for those 11 claims. So I think it goes back to something that someone asked in a previous webinar about the Landlord Protection Fund, and if we see a lot of high claims under that fund. We don't really, based on the numbers there. We've had 11 claims and we've paid out just over $9,000. So that seems to be working really well for us. Landlords seem to really appreciate that we've been able to fill in that gap there and support them in those cases. So I think that's a big success for the program as well. And if you want more information about the HomeConnect program, you can always check out the HomeConnect website at homeconnect.wecanendit.com. And you can always find out more about End Homelessness St. John's and the programs and services that we offer on our website at www.wecanendit.com. And any questions about the HomeConnect program, you can always send to homeconnect@wecanendit.com, whether that's landlord or an agency or anyone else. And either myself or Nicole we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And
so that was kind of our speed round intro to HomeConnect, looking past at the last year, a couple of key successes and also a little bit of hurdles. So we are at the Q&A point of our presentation. And I'm just seeing here one question. So there's a question here that's asking if we can explain a little bit more about HomeConnect Lite. And absolutely. So I can take that question actually. So when we launched HomeConnect, as Nicole was mentioning today, really it's meant to, it's a program that's designed to kind of outweigh those private market, those risks, perceived risks, but it's always been meant to move tenancies into the private market in the same unit. But we do realize that jump is kind of, it is a little bit steep to go from a program that has a landlord protection fund, an ongoing support with kind of an accountability measure there, us checking that to make sure that support is happening, to go from that to just for both a landlord, a tenant, and the community to kind of everyone being on their own. So we realized we needed this sort of middle ground. So with that middle ground is HomeConnect Lite, and really what it looks like is very much almost identical to HomeConnect Full. It's just that where HomeConnect Full would have a 30-day. Once every 30 days, we're making sure those check-ins are happening. As we move to HomeConnect Lite, we kind of work with community agencies and say, all right, so how is this tenancy going? Maybe that support actually, it doesn't necessarily need to be once every 30 days. It might look more like phone calls instead of in-person visits. So we kind of curb that a little bit just to make sure that it's kind of fitting the need of the individual. And the other part that's kind of important for us is actually from a modeling perspective. We know that if a tenancy is able to move into this HomeConnect Lite, we can kind of model our cost per client a little bit different and what the reliance might be on a landlord protection fund, for example. We know that moving into that second phase, we're anticipating there's less issues because they've actually, they've gone a full year or potentially a full 2 years before that next stage. So really things very much stay the same, and it's kind of it's supposed to be a slow grade, out into the private market.
I'll just add a little to that. I know Simone sort of hinted at it at the beginning of the answer to that question. We don't actually have anyone in HomeConnect Lite yet either, because we've just finished our first year. But when we discussed what that would look like, it's meant for people that are still with the same landlord in the same unit. So, they've been there for a year or so. Things are going well, then they would move into HomeConnect Lite. The landlord would know the tenant better, would, know what to expect. And then, another year or so later, when they sort of, move out of HomeConnect, that would be, they would still be in the same unit with the same landlord. So at that point, they would have had several years of renting from that landlord, and they would know each other, pretty well. So it's not, you could be in a unit for 1 year and now you're out of HomeConnect, but you're renting from another landlord starting all over again. It's to build up sort of that relationship with that landlord so that eventually you could, sort of graduate from the program and continue on that relationship with the landlord.
Thanks, Sherwin. So we have another question that's come in here asking if our units are subsidized. So the answer is no, they aren't subsidized right now. Sometimes, it is possible for us to have a unit that has a rent sup, but it's not administered through us, and we don't have any at this point in time. We are open to that, certainly, but it's not what we have at this point in time. What we do look for is affordable units, which, as I mentioned, that vacancy rate skyrocketed in St. John's, but unfortunately the rental rate didn't decrease at the same time. So really what you'll see out there are units that if we're very lucky, we'll get a $500 unit, but it's not very often. It's really has been in between that sort of $600 and $800 range is what we're seeing for bachelor and one bedroom. So we scoop up those lower, their market rents, and we're finding folks are affording them usually through income support, but also needing a top up in many cases. So no rent subs attached to these units, but it's possible in the future. Again, we're just kind of in our first year. And so there's no other questions there, but I'm wondering, we do have another one here. Greetings from the traditional lands of I can't pronounce it, but the First Nation, so from Nanaimo. What does the landlord training look like? How is it done? And what kinds of teaching and learning are used? So Sherwin, I know we haven't started our landlord training yet. There are some resources. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what is to come in the next year and also what those training would be.
Yep. So one of the things that I'm most excited about in terms of training is mental health first aid training. So we're looking at sort of rolling that out, or starting to roll that out towards the end of the summer, early fall. So that's a nationally recognized program through I think it's the Canadian Mental Health Commission. So that's something that I think a lot of landlords will benefit from. We've heard from, a few of our landlords that, when problems arise, that they don't necessarily have the training or the skills to, not even to be able to deal with it, but to even know what to do or who to call. So I think, if we can offer those kinds of opportunities to the landlords that we work with, I think, it's a win-win for everyone. It's a win for our clients. It's a win for the landlords. And a win for the larger community, because a lot of the landlords that we work with also have other rental units. They have other tenants besides just HomeConnect tenants. So, the more training and opportunities that we can offer around things like that, the better. I'm not 100% sure if we've sorted out the details for this yet, but we're also looking at maybe some Indigenous training of some sort. I don't know the details yet, but that's something we were looking at coming up in this year. We also have some videos that we started to put together, like a video series between myself and Nicole talking about the Residential Tenancies Act, successful tenancies, those kinds of things. So I think we've just launched the first 2 of those so far, but there's more to come. I think the plan was every month or 2 that we'll be releasing more videos. So those are sort of small, bite-sized, pieces of information that 2 or 3 minutes long. You don't have to commit a whole lot of time to those. And then written resources and stuff. We've started to work on some of those, like magnets, like fridge magnets of who to call when different problems arise. Some written stuff, material. What would you call it? Sort of like troubleshooting information, who to call or what to do when you experience different kinds of problems and things like that. So we're always looking at training opportunities and educational opportunities for the landlords that we work with. So I think this year we're going to see a lot more of that now that we're starting to get some of our processes and all of that stuff in place and sort of refined. We can move on to the training and education opportunities for landlords, because those are an important part of the program. And I think it's going to lead to a lot more successful tenancies in the end.
Just want to jump in here too, not to belabor an issue, but I think it's really key one of the learnings that we learned this kind of past year is the engagement with landlords in the private market. Coming from the tenancy agency side, I have a really clear picture of the lay of the land in the community agencies and who supports what. As a private landlord, it's very clear that they necessarily don't know who to reach out to or what each agency kind of does. And they often think that each agency is super connected behind the scenes and that we all know what everyone is kind of always doing. So one of the things that we've kind of informally been doing as Sherman onboards is giving a little bit of information just to kind of about the lay of the land in the city, what our program kind of hopes to do. And then as we go through which agency would be great for the concerns that they kind of bring up and how that support kind of works. Often our landlords have other rentals that are not necessarily with us, but they might work with other agencies in the community. So we do a level of education one-on-one verbally, just kind of helping people understand each agency's kind of role. And I think that that's been a big help to the landlords in terms of understanding the complex needs of our tenants and what they can avail of.
Thanks, Nicole. So I see two questions, one in our chat and one in our Q&A. There's one coming in from Leanne. In terms of training, I think it's important to look into cultural diversity training with First Light. A lot of barriers that we see within our communities, the lack of knowledge. Absolutely, Leanne, and I'm actually happy to say that not only are all in Homeless of St. John staff just about to take part in that training, many of us already have, but there's a meeting that was set up, I believe, in the next week or two with First Light to do exactly that, to look into that training, not just for landlords, for the community, and just to see what kind of partnership potential would be there. So completely agree with you on that one. From the chat, I'm seeing, hi, you mentioned that clients may need a top-up. A top-up. So where is that top-up coming from? Social assistance or where? So Nicole, you could probably answer that one because there's a range, but did you want to take that one? I can as well.
I got it. That again, a really great question. And it's a question we often get. Unfortunately, a lot of our clients just don't have the income support piece that will pay for what a unit goes for in St. John's this day and age. That's not up to HomeConnect. We don't set those rates. So the agencies and specific agencies are able to get funding from different places. Majority come from the Eastern Health Board right now. They provide a complex mental health top-up. ISL does a little bit of top-up as well. But, depending on demographic of the individual, they may be available for other funding, depending on what system they come in contact with. So each agency kind of specifically works with their demographic. So seniors, Indigenous folks, Aboriginal, people from out of the city, anyone who is past military or a veteran, all those kind of niche pieces, depending on who your client is, we can work with you to figure out the best space to get the funding for. So a variety of places, I guess, is the best answer. You're muted, Simone.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm just seeing if there's any other questions coming in. There aren't any right now. I'll give folks another minute or two in case there's any additional ones. And kind of while we're waiting for those last minute coming in, I'm wondering maybe Sherwin, you can kind of speak a little bit further about our landlord engagement efforts to come. We know we have a few units right now on our website, but we're hoping to kind of move forward now that our program's a lot more stable and some of those processes and kinks that Nicole was talking about, our hurdles, have been smoothed out a little bit and we're in solid footing. We're hoping to now ramp up those efforts.
So in the past, we have used a variety of methods to attract landlords or make them aware of the program. Social media was one. We've been on Kijiji and the buy and sell websites. We've done some advertising in newspapers. And, we did have some good success with those. So those are some things that we're going to continue. There has been a little bit of a slowdown, I guess I'll call it, over the last little while. As we sort of onboarded new staff and sort of worked to refine some of our processes and, learn from, some of the troubles that we've run into in the first year and, try to make sure that we don't continue to have those kinds of problems. So we'll definitely be doing, a lot more of that landlord engagement going forward now that we're starting to get some of these processes mapped out and in place and working. So I think, you can probably expect to see us, on social media, on the, Kijiji and the buy and sell websites, probably in the newspaper. We haven't made plans for this stuff yet, but, those are things that have worked well for us in the past. So, sort of didn't really hit pause, but we stopped actively looking for landlords for a little period of time, just so that we could focus on trying to smooth out some of this stuff so that, we could go into year two in a lot stronger position. So I think just across the board, I've done cold calling. I've gone on, Kijiji and the buy and sell websites and have responded to ads, for units that would be suitable for HomeConnect. So I think pretty much across the board, you can just expect a lot more of that kind of, activity going forward, because ideally, there should always be units available. When we talked about our first year, some of the successes we've had, and, keeping the number of evictions low, the reason for that is, in some of the other cases where things weren't working out, we had other units that were suitable, that the tenant was able to move into. So, having a healthy stock of available units also helps us be able to mitigate issues when they come up, because we've got, other places that people can look at. So I think you'll sort of see that play out over the next, couple of months or so. That'll start to pick up a bit more, and you should be noticing, more units available in our inventory.
I was about to do it again. Thanks, Sherwin, for answering that. We do have another question coming in, but just, I guess, in follow up to what Sherwin's just said, if folks also know of any landlords that are out there, and you might have kind of landlord contacts yourself, we always make this pitch, and you think they might be a fit for the HomeConnect program and avail of some of those incentives and that landlord protection that we're talking about, feel free to send them our way, refer them, and we'll be happy to follow up. Yeah, so the other question I have here is from someone who's working with folks at the Waterford Hospital who have complex discharge planning needs. Unfortunately, the staff cannot be a liaison for long-term liaison for these individuals. So if folks are chosen for a HomeConnect unit, they're not able to do that once a month visit. And are there any alternatives? So that's a great question, and it is definitely something that we've wrestled with throughout this year. I know Nicole alluded to that, and I'm sure she'll expand on what I'm going to say. But in the beginning, we were trying to figure out how that could work, and realize that that was definitely a limitation of our program, because that in-person once a month follow-up visit just proved to really be critical to make sure that folks, that small problems weren't becoming big. And so rather than going from, eviction prevention and in crisis situations, we were kind of seeing if the stability was moving at all. So we did find that to be an important component of our program. So right now the answer is no, but it's a no but. As we mentioned, kind of in the year to come, we are looking to integrate with coordinated access to housing. And part of that would be for exactly that reason. So we don't want HomeConnect, this program, there to be a barrier to it. What we just need to do is to find sufficient support that could be connected to that individual, so that there would be that support in place if something, if they needed it throughout their tenancy. Nicole, anything to add on that from your perspective? Always.
I always have more words. Like it's never not a thing. You need more words, it's me. So yeah, I want to say hi, Jenny, first. That is a huge concern for me, especially anybody who's institutionalized, be it the Waterford or corrections. It's a bit of a gap. And as we mentioned, we're definitely going to partner with coordinated access as we move forward. And that's going to be to help match those specific demographic to other supports in the community. I think anyone coming out of an institution, be it, a stay for a short period of time or a long period of time, might be able to use or avail of community supports outside the housing piece even. So matching them with an appropriate support is going to help them all around their total circle of care. And so by doing that, I encourage you to put in any applications, give me a call, have a chat. And then as more capacity in the community builds to take on some case management, we can kind of pair them up with what's the appropriate agency and then make a good fit. And we can hopefully bridge that gap, so that people who are currently unable to do the viewing or have those supports where they're to right now avail of the HomeConnect, hopefully they can come out and transition into a house with some supports and build a great connection with the outstanding community agency. That's our goal.
Thanks, Jenny. And we have a vote of confidence here from Jenny saying that she would also help us wherever she can. So appreciate that. There's no more open questions. I'll give it the last call. If you have anything that you're typing out right now, I'll give you 10 seconds or less to to hit send. But we do want to say thanks to everyone for taking the time out of your day to come and join us for our webinar and to hear a little bit more about our program, to hear about what's to come. Again, I mean, really, Nicole and Sherwin are the faces of this program more than anything. If you're in the community sector, I'm sure you've already interacted with Nicole. And likewise in the landlord sector, Sherwin, they're both dynamite staff. So if you haven't spoken with them before, I completely encourage you to reach out and get to know our two frontline staff for the program. I'm always also happy to answer questions as well. But huge thanks, folks, for joining us here today. If there's any follow-up, our information is listed here one more time, and you can reach out to us in any of those ways, and someone appropriate will follow up with you. So I think that's it. Thanks so much. And